said that you were particularly interested, Paul, in physical phenomena.
Yeah,
Do you want us to talk about maybe the Scole experiments
yeah,
or,
that would be a great one.
subsequent experiments?
I don't know a great deal about. I know it's Robin Foy's circle and his wife, isn't it? I don't know much more about it though. So yeah,
Well,
talk about
they both
Scole.
passed on now, Robin and Sandra. They retired to Spain, I think it was, and I lost contact with them, and they both passed on then. But in the late 1990s, Albert Best was asked by me, did he know of any group anywhere that was getting regular and reliable physical phenomena that someone like myself could observe and interact with? And he said, no, there's only one group, he said, that I hear good reports from, like that, regular, never have a bad sitting and so on. He said, I'll write you a letter of introduction, that might get you in the door. And at that time, I was being tested by the SNU at Stansted as being a physical medium. I think I failed, basically, because although they got some light phenomena, it had a tremendous strain on me. And they said, come back when you've grown up, son, or when you're better. But anyway, Albert died before he wrote the letter.
Oh,
And then a friend who'd been sitting in circle with us, he was given an invite to go to the group, and he invited Sarah and I and another couple to accompany him. So the five of us went from Scotland and went down to see Robin and Sandra in their home, and were taken to the basement. And I can say, Paul, no matter who's listening, it was the most spectacular and wonderful representation of the very best physical phenomena I've ever known or heard of in my lifetime. I think I would have to give you a list just to cover some of the things that happened, because there were so many. But I said to Robin Foy, is it a dark seance? Because that's what I was used to. And he smiled and he said, if you mean, will we have electric lights on? The answer is no. And I knew it could be an underground basement, brick built, so I knew that would probably mean pitch blackness. And he smiled, he said, but don't worry about it, Nick. Spirit will provide all the light you need. And I burst out laughing, thinking it was a little joke. It wasn't. When you looked up at the ceiling, you could see stars or small orbs twinkling, and there were many, many of them, and they were swirling round slowly like a solar system might. And then they came down to just above head height, and they still kept swirling. And then some of them disappeared, and the brighter ones began to examine each person and shine lights on them, and they were self-illuminating, and they were like little spheres, and you could see as an orb approached someone, other people in the room could see that person, and then of course as another orb came, there would be more lights, and 12 to 20 lights maybe at any one time lit up the room so you could see the participants and the furniture. Now, I've never been in a seance up to that point that could do that so strongly. Maybe you would get one or two orbs or something, but not enough to recreate light to see them. And then objects began to levitate, and orbs would go into objects and make a crystal glow from inside. And I checked the crystal, there was no artificial electric bulb or anything. Bells rang that were hanging and could be clearly seen. No one was touching them. The mediums gave accurate clairvoyance, including to Sarah and I, which we knew nobody else could have known. And so it rolled on for maybe 2 hours.
mm-hmm.
When we left, we knew we had experienced the best seance we'd ever experienced, yes, by far. And then we were told it was a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But 6 months later, Robin Foy phoned and said, would we come back? And I pointed out to him that I was really surprised he was asking that, because it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, thinking there'd been a clerical error and he'd forgotten they'd already been invited. And he said, no, he said, that's what we were told too. But the spirit team say, when you want to try and experiment the likes of which we've never done, and we need really good contributors of energy builders, he told them. He said, so get the 5 people back from Scotland. So he went back down there, and it was astounding. The orbs by now were like flying torches with directional beams that could go feet in front of them. And then other things happened, including craft materializing in midair. They looked 3-dimensional, some looked solid, some looked translucent. They flew around the room, focusing their beam on an object in the coffee table, in the central table, or on a sitter. And as they flew around, they maintained the focus of their lights.
Wow.
So
what did you call them?
I called them spaceships, but I always got a row from Sarah because I mean the craft, 3-dimensional craft,
A craft,
miniature
right.
UAPs, if you like. But she
Millennium
says
Falcon type thing.
if I have any credibility, that's the point I lose.
That you lose everyone when you say that there. But that in fact is the case, that a dark room is lit so that you can see Paul, us, as well as you're seeing us now.
And this was a room that I checked beforehand. Concrete floor, brick arch ceiling, only one coal chute, which was being built over and wasn't able to be opened, of a modest size. Metal frame chairs and a wooden coffee table with a glass dome on it, which they felt was conducive for building the energy for light phenomena. But just in case you think I'm the one with the wild stories, and my wife doesn't like that, let me turn the tables on her. I think I saw you levitate once there.
Yes. Now I'm a fairly solid person, substantial woman, and at that time, it was the case. But just leading up to that, the lights, the energy that we saw were a pale green, creamy color, and they moved around the room rapidly. And your rational mind is saying, this can't be right. They must be attached to something. But you can't see anything, and you can see it like this here. And where's it coming from? But when they moved around the legs of the chairs, when they moved through a crystal and then through the coffee table, you know, the rational mind said, no, this is different. But they shot towards people. So they would shoot up to your face as if they were having a good look at you. And you at one point asked if you could hold one.
Yeah, lots of people were getting touched and saying so. And it certainly looked that way, including Sarah squealing because I know I'd entered the ribcage. But so I said with an air of self-pity, I put my hand out and I said, no one's touched me. And an orb shot round in a semicircle, hovered outside the palm of my hand and then bounced off the palm of my hand. And it felt like a little rubber ball. So I put my other hand over it like so and turned my hands because I wanted to see if there was a nylon filament fisherman's line attached to an LED. And of course, there was no attachment. The light was coming out from between my fingers. And when I said, I'll let it go now and opened my hands, the light popped up, shone a light in my face and zoomed off in a semicircle back to where it had been. Now, I think it would have been a very tricky dexterity challenge for anyone to do that with an LED, even controlled remotely. I was so skeptical when I first saw the lights above me in that first sitting. I thought, oh, they've got fiber optic planetarium. We must be in candid camera or something, because they all want us to go, ooh, when actually somebody else was sitting with a laptop and, you know. Well, but of course, when they come down into the room and began to touch people.
So touching people, as I said, they would move at quite rapid speed, and you would jerk because you thought they're going to hit me. but they would stop, and it was as if they were observing you, and they were touching people on their body. But Robin had put us in seats that he wanted us to sit in. And the seat I was sitting in, I wasn't aware till much later, it was called the hot seat, where things happened. And at that particular time, with these energy lights, it came racing up to my middle. And it's all right, I'm looking down. And this is where I think people are going to say her credibility is gone. It popped in. And I'm thinking, it disappeared. But what I could feel inside was as if something was scratching to get out.
Oh.
And I'm saying, it's wanting out. Where is it? It's wanting out. Now, it was only probably seconds, maybe 5-10 seconds inside. And the person next to me was looking at me, and I'm squealing, which is really very sad, squealing. And then there was this pop. And out it went on its merry way again. And I'm saying, that thing's just gone inside me. And yeah, and people were agreeing because they could see it.
Inside.
It's scratching as if it wants out. Just like that there. So there was laughter because I was just like, oh my goodness. But shortly after that, my chair began to levitate. Now,
Were you in it?
I was in it. That's what I'm saying, a substantial woman. Now, there was barely a foot or 30 centimetres between the back of the chair and the wall, but it was so light, you would see if there was somebody there. And my chair went up on its back 2 legs. And of course, I'm squealing again, going, I can't get this chair down, it's up. And the person next to me put their hands underneath the front so that he said, no, she's up, that there was that amount of space between the legs and the floor. Now, there was no one behind me. The person sitting beside me was going, look, she's levitating. And that was it. I had no control. They decided, or whatever power it was, decided when my chair would go back to the ground.
Right. That's just the front 2 legs, is it?
Front 2 legs went up.
The back 2 legs didn't.
One of the things that would happen is if anyone had been holding that chair at roughly 45 degrees and Sarah was on it, her rocking attempt to go forwards or maybe back would have moved the chair. It would have been very difficult for it not to move at all.
Yeah.
And I could see her
So
moving,
everybody else.
but
Yeah.
nothing was happening.
And
But
did
it
that
doesn't end there.
sorry. Did that chair feel really solid? Because I noticed
Yes.
with table tilting, you can tip the spirit world will tilt the table almost 4 inches from the ground, and it's impossible
right.
to think, well, why hasn't that fallen?
Exactly.
It feels solid, doesn't it?
Oh,
And it felt like that, did it?
It felt solid. It was as if the front of my chair had gone up, and the person, as I say, next to me, who was so shocked because everybody could see, got down and was able to put their hand underneath and said, it is not an illusion that the legs are off. But I had no control of that chair at all.
Your feet were off the ground as well then.
They were, in
Yeah.
more ways than one.
And I bet you were scared then you were going to go backwards.
Well, the wall would have stopped that.
The wall would have stopped that.
Oh, right. I was lucky then.
And this part of my mind, you go through all of these possibilities, but I knew there was no one behind me because you would have seen it, just like I would have seen if it was someone across the way. But it transpires, well, that seat is concerned. That's quite a common thing to happen in that particular seat.
The hot seat.
So, of course, we didn't know anything.
But it could be worse. It could be a pregnant seat that they have where there's a lot of women working.
So in my mind, even though I saw that take place in dimly, intermittently lit kind of way, and I fully accept Sarah's experience of it, I keep thinking an external listener would say, if it was jammed against the wall behind, that would give it a sense of solidity. So I'm going to prompt Sarah as to what else happened that makes you think, well, there's no explanation for that. I saw a male entity. I actually saw two, but I saw one in particular standing talking to her and shaking her hand.
Yes. And there was some clairvoyance at that time as well. Two shapes, almost silver-like, but taking on masculine characteristics, emerged and built up to the front and slightly to the right of me. Now, sitting beside me on the right-hand side was a trolley with the music system on it. So there wasn't another person sitting beside me, and Robin Foy was sitting next to that. The clairvoyance from one of the, I don't remember if it was Diane or Alan Bennett, they were talking to me and they were laughing. And they were suggesting that I'd had an interesting experience the night before. So, of course, everybody's tittering around the room. They thought that was funny. I didn't find it funny at all, because the night before, we had booked in to a local inn. And as we were getting up the stairs, there in the main hallway, in a sealed crate, was a python.
Python.
Living.
A
Living
real
python.
coiled python.
Now, I'm not very keen on snakes either.
No, I'm not. And I don't rationalize that. So I spent the night thinking, do I put a towel underneath the door? I'm lying like this in bed. Truly, do I get up and go out and sleep in the car? I could not sleep. Now, rationally, I knew that was not going to get out of the cage, but that didn't make any difference. So the clairvoyance was saying, that was an interesting experience, and you didn't like it. You're not good with snakes, are you? And all of that. And of course, nobody else knew. You had an idea, because I don't know how terrible it was. So that was a bit of an eye-opener. Now, the two figures took shape, and the one closest to me spoke just like we're chatting, and asked if I would shake their hand. So I did, shook their hand, and it just felt like a normal, ordinary hand. Didn't feel rubbery, didn't feel hot, didn't feel cold, just a normal, ordinary hand. Bearing in mind, when I see spirit, it can be like that at times. So they were talking about my experience. And then this person said, in a male voice, would you like to feel up my arm? So I'm holding a hand, I'm feeling up their arm, get to their elbow, right through it. There was nothing. And you're laughing. Of course, I do this silly thing of squealing. There's nothing there. I'm shouting. And of course, other people they're just looking at me like, what is going on with this woman? And they're laughing at me.
Yeah, they would.
They would.
Out of your discomfort and shock.
It was the shock of the fact there was a solid arm up to here, but then literally there was nothing.
But you could see you could see the shape. Yeah.
The shape, but my hand was going through it.
Wow. Wonderful.
Sorry. I mentioned earlier that in the second visit, spacecraft materialized in the middle of the room. Classic saucer shape, triangular, looked like a rounded end at one end, and something that looked like a Chinook helicopter, but with no blades, just a bulbous tube. But what's important about that, because maybe in theory, hidden somewhere in the coal chute or something, somebody had a fishing rod with little
a drone. Maybe it was a drone.
Yeah. What happened was that a tube materialized. It would have been about this size.
Length.
Yeah. And when it turned towards me and I was able to look inside this light tube, I got the impression that it was several feet in depth, like a kaleidoscope of fractured light. There was a real sense of the tube might have been 2.5 feet or something, but I was looking at 5, 7 feet down the tube. And then emerging from the tube was a small pair of what looked like very delicate female hands. And as the tube came towards each sitter's face, the hands would come out in an act of supplication or prayer, and then go slightly inside the tube. The tube would move around to the next sitter, the hands would come out, and so on.
How
Now,
beautiful.
I
Oh, beautiful.
I cannot think how that could be replicated. But I did speak to some special effects guys who work for Sony Pictures. And I said, could you replicate that and the craft or the movements or the orbs and so on? And he said, no. I said, guys, if I gave you £1 million each, come on. And they said, you're not listening to us. In order to create a three-dimensional holographic image, we need 3 points of projection that are on oil-dampened platforms, because a lorry traveling on the road outside might send vibration through the floor and affect the image. Secondly, we cannot keep the integrity and the sharpness of the image at speed with a complicated trajectory. And if it goes down round tables or legs or whatever, and we lose even one of the lines of sight, it'll affect the integrity of the image, and you would see it.
Wow.
We can't do what you're describing because it's technically impossible. And of course, in the late 1990s, I accepted that as being correct.
Yeah.
They were the guys that should know. And they were all about being asked to do something that they would put on screen. They added another level of complication to do it in front of an audience that were part of the setting. So I thought it doesn't get any better than this. Spirit people materializing, bringing through craft from other dimensions or levels that spirit don't normally have access to. And indeed, the Scole experiments were closed down by the spirit team, according to Robin Foy, because time travelers from the future wanted to come back to this era. The guess was to make changes so that their future would be different or better. But that was never explained to me. It simply became the spirit team said it was too dangerous to continue. And since they didn't have control over these visitors, they had to close the energy doorway or pathway that allowed them. And we thought we would never see the likes of it again.
Yeah.
But we did.
Good heavens.
After 10 years of unsuccessful experiments in Scotland, we met in our home circle 2 physical mediums who wanted to try it a little bit differently from the school guidelines, a lot more emphasis on bonding and shared communication and love and excitement and positivity, and not that do or nick child kept comparing phenomena with, and they got spectacular phenomena, almost, if not every bit as good as Scole, with things disappearing into walls and ceilings, with the group being moved in the room and not being aware of being moved. And when they put the light on, they're not sitting where they started. And, strange things. And Sarah speaks about one particular sitting where she felt that the walls just collapsed and she was sitting looking into...
You were sitting almost visual, watching a scene.
Wow.
And it was as if almost, like the doll's house you have there behind you, if someone had taken the front piece and just moved it on, and you could see these beautiful scenes. And that happened in quite a few sittings we had with them. And they weren't necessarily current scenes. Some were scenes from long ago, etc., etc. Just amazing stuff.
And where was this?
That's where I got the opportunity to shake a man's hand in spirit. He introduced himself by name and shook his hand, and it was indistinguishable from a man's hand in terms of skin, texture, warmth, structural strength, and the bones of the hand. And as I was shaking his hand, the body wasn't there. That happened once to me, and I don't have permission to talk about everything that happened in those seances, but a table spun so violently I thought if it touched any of the suckers,
yes.
it would knock them out. If
Was
it
it
killed them.
damage? Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
but also, again, this idea that they can race towards you and you feel yourself moving back because you think it's going to collide and it just stops.
A little boy in spirit came running up and said, "You want to feel my face, mister?" And I said, "Yes, please." And he said, "Put your hand out." And I took my hand and he put it in his forehead and he said, "Go down and feel what my face feels like." And I went down the face and got to the chin. And it's difficult to be precise, but I would say a 6-year-old's face. There were no
wow.
children in the building. The door was locked. There were no petite adults in the room. And then as I said, "Can I go back up?" He said, "Yes." And when I got to the forehead, he said, "Oh, stop, mister, because I've not brought all of me through." And I must have sounded disappointed because I went, "Oh." And he said, "But if you're here next time, I'll bring all of me through." And sure enough, the very next seance, I heard the same wee voice saying, "Are you ready, mister? Because I'm coming and I want a cuddle." And he jumped into my lap and I put my arms around this spirit child. And it was like any 6-year-old
Wow.
in terms of
Mhm.
mass and
Wow.
weight and structure and skeletal structure and bones. And it was just a normal kid as far as I could tell. And then he jumped off and ran off and giggled. And so, and I remember being taken to the seance room by spirit. Literally, they grabbed my hand and they led me through the
Wow.
doorway.
And this
when
was a
I
home
sat,
circle somewhere, was it?
yeah,
This
yeah,
was a home
In
circle.
Scotland.
in somebody else's house.
Yeah.
And when I sat down, I said, "Spirit had just grabbed me by the forearm and brought me to this seat." The host mediums laughed. They said, "Yeah, we asked Spirit if it was okay for you to turn up." And they said they would give us a sign. They said, "What better sign can there be than they're dragging you to the seat you have to sit in?" So
How many times did you attend those seances?
well, and I'm not very good with memorizing precise numbers, but I would say half a dozen times.
Well, no, I would say more like a dozen
Oh.
times. And we had a smaller circle involving them in our own home here.
Right.
And they were quite, again, not furniture because the room had no furniture in it.
Yeah.
Other than the chairs and a central table. But it was during the home circle here that the walls fell down.
Wow.
And the views were fabulous, absolutely. But one of the things, Paul, we try not to do when we experience things like this is talk out loud so that you influence what other people may see or hear.
Yeah.
And it's very hard when you're going, "Oh my gosh, what's happening? Is it the..." And it's about trying to get that evidence from people.
Yeah.
And
What
all
did you
the
see?
evidence together.
Yeah.
Yes.
What did you hear? What did you feel?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yes, confirms.
A lot of circles like that maintain anonymity as well, don't
Yes.
they? For
Yes.
privacy and ridicule and danger. You know, if the
Mhm.
government got wind that you could bring forth a relative, they can threaten the mediums, and they have done. According to Michael Roll, he
Yes.
knows of a medium who was scared off and
We've heard
threats
of
by
that.
men in black. Yeah.
We've heard of that happening to people that we know. And obviously, again, they don't want it mentioned because they don't want anyone pursuing them
Yeah.
Regarding this. And
Yeah.
some of the stories that you hear are quite unbelievable. As you say, the men in black idea, changing from one side of the road to the other, people who nobody knows anything about, warning them off, or inviting them to work with our government.
Yeah.
Covert surveillance.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned it because the viewers wouldn't. It's not scientific if you don't name the people, the occasion, etc., etc. But we're dealing with a topic here that is decidedly different to the norm, and you've got to protect people, haven't you?
I agree. I agree.
I have been told, though it's only hearsay, I have been told by people who have knowledge of military intelligence that the government have been doing experiments of their own and are further ahead than spiritualist mediums in their whole circles.
Oh,
But they would like contributions to that work from established mediums, and they're struggling to get it because of the need for absolute secrecy. And on one occasion, a medium was given evidence that their seances had been bugged because
Oh.
the military intelligence had been attempting to find out what was happening by recording their conversations. And when
Good
the
heavens.
medium denied any kind of physical mediumship seances took place, they were able to provide evidence they'd been listening in. And even Robin Foy said that he found strange electronic equipment attached to the bins that stood outside the cellar where he operated.
Good heavens.
So
Yes.
I shrug my shoulders. I neither believe it, but I'm not willing to disbelieve it. I think it's quite likely, especially what little I know of the American experience with psychic warfare and so on.
Yeah.
It's probably happening in other countries, and why not us?
No, you can bet your life it's happening.
But you can imagine too that how these experiences have shaped our thinking.
Definitely. Yeah. And they open up a
And
new world, don't they? Literally.
well, they have, yes. But I think it's a world we knew was there.
Yeah.
And it's confirmed so many things for us.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be shouting it from the treetops,
No.
but you try and live your life so that people can understand and see that things have touched you.
Yeah.
Albert's book, biography of Albert, I mentioned earlier, The Best of Both Worlds. It comes back to me every so often because I think it is genuinely challenging to have a foot in the world of mediumship and spirit communication and physical phenomena and even out of this world in non-human intelligence, and still have a foot in a scientific, skeptical, rational based examination of the evidence. And when the spooky world, as it were, goes wild and is even difficult to contemplate, and the scientific world becomes more and more stuck in an empirical approach, eventually you can't easily keep both in balance.
No.
There are lots of people I know who are believers, but have kissed their brains goodbye. There are lots of skeptics, if not cynics, with excellent scientific pedigrees who have never had a psychic experience in their lives. And trying to bring these two worlds together so that there's an overlap and sensible discussion can take place, I think continues to be a challenge. And it's not helped by pure mediumship.
That's right. That's right. In a nutshell, yeah. And when you think, I mean, the reason most of us do this work and talk about experiences like the ones you two have just been describing is that we want to take away the fear of dying. You know, and ultimately, if the government wanted to control you, is to control the fear of death and take away the fear of death from the masses. You can't control them, you know, but from an individual's perspective, lose the fear of dying and death because you know you can't die for want of trying. You'll be alive in another dimension. But it just enriches your life. You live every day then with the beauty of, and you explore the idea of a God power and whatever it will mean to you. It does change you. I think it will change society as well.
The Scole experiments, and to some extent my visit to South America, have powerfully influenced my view of the afterlife and of it's taken away almost all fear of death. I had the good fortune to have a triple bypass earlier last year, and I walked into that operation knowing there was a significant risk that I might not walk out. And other than putting my affairs in order, it didn't bother me in the way that I think it bothers some people. I knew that I would continue in some energetic form. One thing I would say, Paul, is the demonic.
Mhm.
Americans are full of this idea of there are demons, and if you communicate with the spirit world, how are you going to prevent the demonic from getting involved? Now, I've never met the demonic. I've met spirit people like earth people, earthlings, who aren't very nice. But that doesn't make anybody demonic.
No.
So I am left wondering. I have a couple of acquaintances, online friends, who are demonologists from America. And I believe that they believe that what they've encountered is demonic, and they've got lots of experience. Some of it has got credible evidence behind it and multiple witnesses. And it makes me think, what would happen if I stepped into that world and investigated it and tried the same techniques that have been largely successful so far? And here's what I think. I was invited across to a home in Seattle. I went with Steve Mira, who's a well-known Manchester investigator. And we were there for about a week, 5 days or 6 days. And it was supposed to be America's most demonic haunting. And there were lots of things that would suggest that, burning Bibles and crucifixes and crosses and spontaneously combusting, 666 appearing in the bedroom door. And even when we were there, the experiments that they set up in closed rooms with taped doors and windows so that they could not be the possibility of quiet access, still had phenomena such as cameras being turned to face the wall and a vibration monitor in the wooden frame bed falling onto the floor when obviously there's no one in the room to do that. So for me, the next level of frontier of exploration is to try and see if the kind of beliefs that my clergyman father encouraged in me could have any basis in truth. Is there such a thing as the devil and his fallen angels or demons? And I would want evidence rather than the belief system. I've got the belief system, I've chosen to push it away a wee bit. But that would be my closing thoughts. And I don't recommend people to get involved in spiritual seance type activities unless they have a support network and a knowledge and perhaps a guide or a teacher. It has to be a collaborative experiment rather than individuals, because I think it's easy to become overwhelmed and imbalanced.
Yeah, it's got to be done in light and love, haven't it? And harmony. You've got to have harmony in the group.
Light, love, and harmony. But I think we've been very fortunate in our lives, Paul. We've had these wonderful experiences. It has changed how we view life. But what we do, and it's not public knowledge, is if we get requests for help, then we respond. And it's done quietly, confidentiality is maintained, and we do it for free. Because we've been privileged to experience what we have. And if we then subsequently can support and help others, then that is as good a way of saying thank you for what we are seeing.
Well, thank you very much, Nick and Sarah. Your company today has been wonderful. Your testimony has been literally off the planet, but it's so beautiful and wonderfully given. You've got impeccable backgrounds in academia and the science fraternity, and you're open-minded, expressive, and you've been wonderful testimonials there. The evidence you've given is truly magnificent. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thanks then, right, Paul.
Thank you.
We're knocking it off the...
Yeah, hundreds and hundreds.
Hundreds.
I mean,
Wow.
it's Yeah, hundreds and
talking?
hundreds.
Hundreds?
I mean,
Wow.
it's
So they've typed, somebody has taken the effort originally to produce those typed manuscripts. And there's a lot of them. How many of them are there then?
a lot.
You have a lot. What are we talking? 200, 20?
Yeah,
What are
hundreds
we
and
talking?
hundreds.
Hundreds?
I mean,
Wow.
it's I'm actually in discussion with Paul.
Those typed manuscripts. And there's a lot of them. How many of them are there then?
A lot.
You have a lot. What are we talking? 200, 20?
Yeah,
What are
hundreds
we
and
talking?
hundreds.
Hundreds?
I mean,
Wow.
it's I'm actually in discussion with Paul. Yeah, hundreds and
talking?
hundreds.
Hundreds?
I mean,
Wow.
it's yeah, hundreds and
talking?
hundreds.
Hundreds?
I mean,
Wow.
it's yeah, hundreds and
talking?
hundreds.
Hundreds?
I mean, it's which is published later on. It has an additional chapter at the end, but if you can try to find 40 Years in Medium, that's I would read that book. It has more pictures in it.
I'm just went on. I'll have to edit that out. Hang on a minute. We'll edit this out. There's no talking. Right, so right, where were we? There were two books then about Estelle's life.